Hey everybody, this episode hits on some issues regarding domestic violence. If this is something that affects you or your family, I suggest you call 800-799-7233. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Or text START to 87788. Or Google anything regarding domestic violence and find your nearest domestic violence resources. You're worthy, you're worthwhile. Please get help. Please be safe. We all love you. Now onto the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Scares podcast, the only show that dares to ask the question, is it essential? I am your host, Corbin, and with me today, as always, is Bobby.
Stanley Kubrick made me go crazy.
And Alan.
Hi, everybody. I was trying to come up with something and nothing came to mind.
He can never follow up.
No.
He can never follow up.
No.
Alan, that's why you get to go first a lot of the time.
This makes sense.
We have got an interesting show for you today. We are going to be discussing The Shining as the kickoff to our 2-week Overlook double feature. But before we get into it, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
I do. This will be your first one and only spoiler warning for the, I'm just going to say it in the beginning of this episode, decidedly essential film, The Shining. If you do not want this movie spoiled for you, and if you haven't watched this movie, what the fuck are you doing? Stop, pause, go watch the movie, come back, listen to the entire episode for The Shining. Please skip the time code for our essential spoiler-free discussion. So here's the thing about The Shining. There are documentaries that are dedicated exclusively to the layout of the Overlook Hotel. There's no way with us watching this movie all within the span of a week, we're ever going to be able to give you the full in-depth breakdown of the movie The Shining. Please enjoy our review of Stanley Kubrick's and Stephen King's The Shining anyway. Alan.
Oh, The Shining. So, this movie takes place over in Colorado. We have Jack Torrance, a struggling writer who gets a chance to watch over the Overlook Hotel while they are closed for the winter. All that entails, very simply, is to be isolated with your family up in the mountains for about 5 full months, where you most certainly will not go crazy due to rampant ghosts that have been inhabiting this specific establishment for about 100 years or so now. Literally nothing possibly could go wrong. Oh, also there's a kid who has psychic powers. There's no way that's going to come back to bite anyone in the ass. And let's open it from there.
We can't, again, I'm just going to say it again real quick. This movie is far too complex for us to ever have a in-depth, very intense breakdown of this movie. People have tried harder than we have, and I can't tell if they're crazy or smarter than us. So we're just going to get into
Probably
our
both.
On the film.
Little column A, column B situation there.
So I mean, I rewatched the movie, of course, for the show, but I've been watching this movie with some regularity for like 20 years. And despite the amount of times that I've seen it, like I just know, like we couldn't go into it at that.
Every time you watch
level.
this movie, like, oh my God, this movie is so fucking smart. Like,
yeah, it's just something you like. Sometimes it's hard to speak about like quantitatively, like hard to qualify almost because it's so many, it's 1,000 little things that come together in every single scene. It's like, it's just good, you know, the acting is just kind of perfect always, and like the cinematography, and it's like, you know, how do you even go further than that? So I'm gonna try and make it a little bit personal for us.
Ooh,
sure.
Now I know that, you know, we're Stephen King fans in the group, right, as most horror fans are.
It's true. It's true.
And I know that at least one of us has read the book, Alan.
Correct.
Right? Bobby, have you read the book, The Shining?
I haven't. I've seen this movie at least 3 times, and I haven't read the book because I know Stephen King doesn't like it. But every person I've ever talked to has said that this is the book, but it's show not tell.
Mm-hmm. So I also haven't read the book. So in that case, I'm going to pass it right over to Alan.
Okay.
And I would love some thoughts on the comparison between the two.
I have a confession. I think this might have been my first viewing of The Shining in its movie form. I don't think I have seen bits and pieces. Of course, I mean, here's Johnny, like who it's on like every top 10 horror scene of all, like it's a classic. But I don't think I've ever
all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's a great moment.
I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched the film. It's more like I've experienced the film through osmosis more so than like actually watching it. Wow. That being said, one of the key differences between the book and the movie is so the reader experience Jack Torrance in his head. So there's a lot of things that Jack is thinking that are disgusting, like truly vile things that this man constantly is thinking. What he calls Wendy, this movie touches on it. It's substantially worse than the novel. So one thing about Stephen King, he's really good at letting you know who the bad person is by the language with which that person speaks with, whether that is incredibly racist language or incredibly misogynistic / sexist language. For good or for better or for worse, that is a very Stephen King thing.
He's very good at just letting you know that like the bad guys are the racists and sexists. It's really good to know that.
It's this straightforward.
It kind of comes off a little like ham-fisted at times, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't think it does for a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't recognize that like saying the N-word is a bad thing. But hey, fun fact, listeners, saying the N-word, it's a bad thing and you shouldn't do it.
The big overarching point I'm wanting to get here is I don't think that this movie succeeds in making you visually understand what is happening to Jack Torrance without Jack Nicholson doing it. And I say that because there is so much context that you read about his thoughts. Jack Nicholson shows those thoughts with his face. And that is, it cannot be overstated how important, how like without that, those facial characteristics, his expressiveness, you don't have the same, you may still have a great movie, but it's not going to be like The Shining. And that's where the adaptation for me is just surreal to watch, because it takes the reading aspect of the novel and brings it. I don't think I've ever had a movie do the like show the character's thoughts better than this, period. Because I think this movie does it like to a T perfect. So good.
I'm gonna agree with that. Having not actually read the book, this movie does this cycle of violence in a really, really like crazy real way. A little bit of a thing for myself. Part of my day job, I work in the field of domestic violence, and this cycle of violence is a thing that I deal with very, very clearly. And watching both Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, right, Jack and Wendy, and the way in which she tries to accommodate in a way that he feels is like her pressuring him, and him never seeing the absolute amount of work that she does to try to maintain the relationship's happiness scale, and when just watching Danny in the background just falling apart is just like, oh my god, this is the most tragic, fucked up, scary thing, because everybody on the outside can see exactly what's going to happen. Like, it's bad. This is bad. This is a powder keg ready to explode, and it's only Jack's fault. And like it just becomes this more scary and scary and scary thing. And then you add the supernatural element to it, and you're like, oh my god, both Danny and Jack have the shining, and only Danny gets it. Fuck! Like, it just becomes so good. Like, oh my god.
What's fun about that is again, from the book's perspective, they never really confirm that Jack has any shine to him, but you can kind of tell he does, like, even within reading it. Like, it's not the same level. And in Dr. Sleep actually explains this a little better. The idea
which we'll get to.
We'll get to, yeah. I'm actually very interested. There are some things that happen in the movie that are gonna make
I know that Dr. Sleep the movie, I haven't seen it.
I haven't either.
I know that it acts as a sequel, as an adaptation to the book and as a sequel to the movie, so it's sort of like
it's gonna be interesting,
crossing both lines. Apparently it's very, very good. I'm very excited to watch.
I love it. I listen, I've seen both of them and I love them, so I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I haven't watched it yet, but I do love Mike Flanagan. So
the other thing that we don't necessarily get in the film, there's two kind of core things that are a little bit missing, and it's, to me, I excuse it because it's a movie. There's only so much we can go into. The cycle of violence, like you're describing, that also starts with Jack's dad. We don't really hear about that in the movie, but that's a key thing, that Jack does not want to be his father, and Danny doesn't want to be his father. We'll get to that next week. There's that cycle, that cyclical nature of, trying to avoid that and doing everything you can to only become that monster. That's kind of missing in the movie. There's only so much they can do. I get it. And the ghost stuff, that is pretty, I wouldn't, tame is not the right word, but there are more happenings that happen throughout, whereas the movie kind of goes more of a traditional movie approach where, like, rising action, we get to the climax, and there's just shit happening all over the place. Well, shit's been happening all over the place for, like, the whole time they were there.
I just want to touch on two things.
Still good.
Two movies that came out at the same time, The Changeling and The Shining. They came out the same year, about 2 months apart, and they both have an iconic ball rolling into frame scene that is, like, pretty wild to me, that, like, both Kubrick and whoever did The Changeling, which is, we've never done it for the film, but is an iconic horror film. It's one of my favorites of all time. They both have that. It's like, what the fuck's happened? But, like, I don't know. This movie is just good, right? And, like, I think that the amount of emptiness they show in this movie is just, like, they show you, not tell you what's going. Like, again, I've said it already twice within, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes of talking about this movie. Of just, like, there's so much nothing, but the nothingness is so unsettling.
And on top of that, the other thing that I think the movie does very, very well is the just Tuesday.
Yeah.
I love
Thursday.
That. Yeah.
Like, there,
it's been 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you feel like you can't get your bearings when you're watching this film. And that's, again, making me feel confused as to what time it is just brilliant. So good.
That's like the same thing with The Overlook, is like they show Danny, like, riding his trike through it, but you never get an idea of what the fuck this hotel looks like. Mm-hmm. You always think you understand, but you never do.
It's, and like, again, where's Jack working? I was thinking that because I was like, is this not, like, connected to, like, the main hallway? But it's not.
You see him roll. You see Danny roll through it. And he rolls through it to what seems to be an upstairs place, but it's clearly not. It's so confusing. It's amazing. It's amazing because you're just like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, it's so good. Oh, and like, I think, again, it goes back to, like, the whole, like, the domestic violence thing of, like, you never know what's happening. You're constantly feeling like you have to go back to Jack to tell you, because, like, when they go back to Jack, things weirdly make sense in, like, a fucked up way of just being like, I'm angry and I'm crazy. And you go, okay, so Jack's crazy. That's, okay, this makes sense. Jack's crazy. Everybody else is fine. There's nothing else going on, but Jack's crazy. And then there's ghosts and, like, nothing else. And it's just, like, and so you keep, like, it's almost like this, like, exercise in, like, gaslighting. It's crazy good. Like, I don't know, man. It's insane. It's insanely good. Stanley Kubrick made Shelley Duvall go crazy, and he is a bad person, but goddamn it, he made good movies. And yeah, okay. Corbin, please. You haven't talked in a long time, and I know you have things to say.
It's been the Bobby and Alan Gush show.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, I mean, I kind of I have an understanding that when we cover Stephen King, there's going to be certain weighting that happens, right? Because we're all Stephen King fans, but I'm the least fan, and I know that, right? So, like,
fair enough.
Yeah, I don't want to take the time away from you. I mean, you can gush for the whole 40 minutes, probably. I think that an important part of The Shining, both in the book and in the movie, is the thinking about the self-reflective elements for Stephen King, right? Clearly, like, being an alcoholic writer, like, with issues, like, Stephen King kind of puts pieces of himself into all of his characters, all of his leads, I would say. And this one especially, right? And I think it's part of why he even has like problems with The Shining, because it was kind of it was written and is clearly reflective of a dark time in his life. And I think that even without the domestic violence parts of the story, like without that like overtone, there is that like undercurrent of alcoholism, right? Like the entire time, that is really, really powerful. And I think that even makes the ghost elements more unpredictable, because up until kind of like the very end, there is this thought that like, well, maybe there aren't any ghosts, maybe he's like suffering from withdrawal, and maybe he's drunk and he didn't want to say anything, like, he's Danny sees ghosts, he's a little boy, right? Like there's like kind of until Wendy is seeing ghosts, you don't really know for sure that the Overlook is haunted, right? Like it could just be Jack like slipping into insanity, which it is. Yeah. But on top of that, the Overlook is haunted, right? And I think that is what makes it one of like the all-time great like haunted house stories. Because a lot of the really great haunted house stories are like that. Like Haunting of Hill House, the novel, not the series, shares a lot of that in common, where it is kind of like until a certain point you're like, yeah, like, what's really going on here? Like, are there ghosts at all? And sometimes the best ghosts are the ghosts inside us.
Sometimes the best ghosts are the friends we made along the way.
Right. And The Shining like really manages to push that without it making it seem like the movie is never like, well, what if there aren't any ghosts? Whoa. Yeah. Like it never does that to you. But kind of in the back of your head while you're watching, you can easily go like, well, what if there aren't any ghosts? Like nobody's even seeing, like it's just Jack seeing these ghosts a lot of the time, and like that guy is like losing his mind, So like...
That's the beauty of this movie that makes me so mad about the Insidious franchise of feature films. Is they do a lot of the same things, and I'm sorry, you guys knew it was happening.
You did give us a warning.
After watching this movie, you understand why I hate those movies. You get it now, at least a little bit. You have to, because they hit some of the same beats, but so much more hard and correctly that none of those movies hit. You know it to be true. They hit some of the same. They hit some of the same music notes. They hit some of the same jumpy notes. They hit some
the music
of the
was very funny to me when they did the music style. I was like, oh hey.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is they do everything so much better than an Insidious could do, and it's so much I think more that real. Everything about it is so much more real. And
I think that I would never deny such a statement, right? But I think that there is still, I don't want to make this about Insidious, but I think there's still enjoyment to be made, right? Like you can't.
I'm not saying there's not enjoyment to be made, but Insidious is the coward's way out, and
he's just not as good. I mean, like most filmmakers are simply not as good as Stanley Kubrick, right? Like that is just a fact, and so like. Sometimes you just have to, you're just enjoying a normal, filmmaker making a normal quality movie.
Yeah, but that's my point. That's my entire point. We're not going to make the whole the rehashing of last week's episode, which I'm still upset about. But let's be real about this. It's an entirely different caliber that should at least be 3 to 4 points higher than the last movie we reviewed. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'll ever say about this, and we can get back to the enjoyment that we had watching this Stanley Kubrick masterpiece. Can we talk for a second about Shelley Duvall for a second? Because oh my God,
I love Shelley Duvall in this.
What was she?
She's incredible.
Was she abused? Was she abused making this performance happen? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely not. Was she fantastic in this movie? God, yes. Like, she's so...
Was it worth it? No. Was it worth it? Yes.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, but it's what you said. No, I mean, everybody puts in like just absolute S-tier performances. It is insane how good the acting is in this movie, and especially when you consider that a lot of these actors are in other things and don't act this well. I mean, Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, right? These are great actors anyway.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall do act this well in other things, to be fair.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
they did not need to go through what they went through to get this good of a performance. I need to be clear on this, but they did very well.
I think the, sometimes, especially if you don't think too much about like movie making, the effect a director can have on the actor's performance is really understated. And this movie is kind of a great example, I think, of the performance that an amazing director, regardless of method, can pull out of an actor who maybe, does not have performances like this otherwise. And it's just great. I mean, everybody's just amazing in this movie. Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah, Scatman Carruthers, so good.
Incredible.
Dude, specifically call out.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, okay. I want to call out Lloyd, the bartender. Of all those random characters, just the delivery of being like this presence who's just there to, make sure Jack is having a good time. Your money's no good here, Jack. It's on the house. Don't worry about it. And then I don't remember what his last line is, but it's incredibly sinister because he's a ghost. He's trying to get Jack to kill his family. And it's the tiniest, minuscule change in delivery, but it means everything for what the context of what he's saying is. It's just so good. Also, sorry, one last thing with that. That specific, the first time he's drinking with Lloyd, I want to say is almost like word for word what it is in the book. It's a very, very close translation, which is just really cool.
Nice.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. Him just not drinking, but getting drunk is very good. And I'll say it, Dick Halloran, Scatman Carruthers, playing the guy who clearly during the on-season is what's keeping the ghosts at bay, just playing this really I just gotta do it, the kid can't protect his dad. I thought he could, and it's not gonna go there's just this moment of responsibility that ends in his own death. That's just god damn, you feel so much for him because he's just trying to do the right thing, and he also knows the real danger at play. It's so all of these really small, even the ghost of the guy who killed the twins. Obviously the
Grady.
Twins play, great. The twins play a very small role, but come play with us, Danny, forever and ever and ever. It's just beautiful lines, and then Grady being hey, he's bringing somebody, and it's a slur that we're not going to say on this podcast, and it's Jesus Christ, and you don't expect it because he's playing such a nice guy up until then. All of a sudden you hear him drop just a hard R on the N-word. It's Jesus Christ. It's just to your point, Kubrick does a fantastic fucking job just being here's a bunch of characters and all of them kick ass, and it's yeah, I guess they do. You hate all of them, but you're made intimidated by every single one of these characters. Even in the fucking beginning, during the interview, when you don't realize you hate Jack yet, you're so worried about Jack getting the job because there's something just so unsettling about that first interview. This movie never makes you feel settled even for a second, and that's there's something crazy good about that.
One part about Jack that is I think would actually be good to add quite a bit. He eats Excedrin dry, chews them up constantly in the book. Just
they
like
show him do it one time in the movie. Once.
When I say this man is so many times he just is chewing Excedrin because he needs something because he's been an alcoholic for so long. Like it's one of those little character bits about him that you get really early on. Like as you're saying about, Jack's bad very early on, even earlier in the book compared to what we see in the movie. And part of it is just that like insatiability that he just can't really quench. Like the Excedrin doesn't do it for him. He needs alcohol, unfortunately. And that's the sad aspect of his character. He's not at that point yet where he can not have it, and it is a way for the ghost to get in.
I would say Jack Nicholson does the job that the Excedrin does in the books, because in the movie you get a sense that Jack Nicholson or Jack Torrance is an angry man.
Oh yeah.
Like early on, there's just like an underneath it where he's just pissed off all the time and he's trying his best not to be angry. And like you get the idea that Wendy feels it too. And like there's just like, again, it goes back to that cycle of violence thing. Like just like holy fuck, like there's just something there that everybody doesn't want to talk about, because last time it happened, right, Danny got his shoulder dislocated, so we can't make this happen again. So like let's all just make Jack happy, and it's just so fucked up, and you just feel it rising, and some of us probably don't even recognize this happening, but you feel the rising and the rising and the rising and the rising of tension, and we don't even like I think that's the thing is like that's the beauty of Stephen King. And like people think that this movie is Kubrick like getting it, but like the reality of Stephen King is all of his best stories are not about the horror that is the supernatural, but it's the horror that we know, right? Like you look at it, you look at Salem's Lot, you look at The Dark Tower. The real horror isn't Pennywise, it isn't the Overlook Hotel, it isn't the Red King, it's the abusive parents or the neglectful parents or the addiction or the regret of a love lost or like the regret of your past. All of this is the real horror of Stephen King, and all of like the actual horror plays backdrop to conquering the horrors of reality. And this movie does a really good job of being like abusive parent, abusive spouse, how do we conquer this? But also there's a ghost story in the background. And I think it's really unfortunate that Stephen King doesn't like this movie, because it is so Stephen King in its delivery. Like it really does nail it. And I think Corbin's right with the idea of, because they make the domestic violence so like focused as a part of it. And I don't think it, and I'm probably biased because I'm a big Stephen King fan. I think Stephen King himself never saw himself as violent, and probably wasn't violent. He was probably just a drug addict and an alcoholic, and those things are not related. So like that, like he's just like, I actually wasn't violent to my family at all, and you're making it seem like it's a whole thing that it wasn't. And I think that's why he doesn't like this movie, but it's so clearly like getting the spirit of his work together, and it's really cool. Yeah sorry. I'm just gushing.
Don't be sorry.
I'm just gushing.
Why would you be sorry?
I'm gushing now. I'm gushing. I'm gushing. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna come. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna come.
It only counts as gushing if you are not saying anything good.
Fair enough.
One other like specific bit of Jack Nicholson kind of selling Jack Torrance as a crazy person, and like seeing how he thinks. Very early on when they're driving up to the Overlook after he's gotten the job, he's talking about this group of people getting stranded and having to resort to cannibalism. And as he says that, he has this sinister, sickening smile creep onto his face.
Oh, yeah.
And it's incredibly intentional the way it's filmed and shot. Like you can't avoid seeing the like, I wouldn't necessarily say pleasure he's experiencing out of it, but just like a sick fascination. It's kind of like it's like one of the first little pieces of candy on a trail that's gonna get you to where we end up, where it's like, oh yeah, this man is gonna lose his fucking mind as he is tormented in this place.
Mm-hmm.
You're not wrong.
Yeah,
not wrong.
But I feel like there's nothing else that any of us have to say on this. And if anyone wants to stop me right now, stop me right now.
I have one other thing.
Okay, Alan.
Okay.
Beautifully.
So the most iconic scene from this film, Jack chopping down the doors to get to Wendy, and here's Johnny. The way that that scene is filmed, of the axe,
I really caught it this time. The camera, like,
it's
beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's
perfect.
that is one of those pieces.
Dare
of
I
cinema.
say perfect?
Oh, you will never never see another scene of a man chopping down a door that is filmed better than that. I don't think it's possible. It's
till
just
this
not.
scene ends. It's like past when Shelley Duvall hits him with a knife and he screams like such a little bitch baby. Like, even on top of it, it's like, oh my god, it's so good. There's nothing wrong with that scene. There's a reason why it's been abused to death. Like,
have you guys seen the filming of that, like from the behind the scenes perspective of it?
Yeah, him just smacking the bed, just being like,
well, he's. I mean, you gotta work up to that, like.
Yeah, and Shelley Duvall holding her ears in the corner, just being like, please, Stanley, leave me alone for 5 seconds. It's super fucked, but god damn it, it's a good scene.
They had to use real doors for those scenes for him.
Yeah,
because he was like, he's put so much in it. I don't know if you guys, so like the prop doors went down so fast it wasn't like getting the scene, so it was just a real door. Like, that's just how fast he cuts through a real door.
I'm gonna say it. I'm pretty sure Jack Nicholson probably wouldn't say either, but Jack Nicholson was almost assuredly also acted in an abusive way by Stanley.
Yeah, but he would. That would never come.
He's 85 years old. He was born in 1937. There's no way he even understands what abuse is. But trust me, I'm pretty sure like it's bad. Like, it's like
I can't imagine there's anybody that worked with Kubrick
with
that wasn't
dulled out axe. There's no way. Yeah. Like, he wasn't like being screamed at by Stanley Kubrick. Like,
I have a question.
Worth it though.
Sure.
A sacrilege question, if I'm being honest.
Oh. Ugh.
If this movie, in the world we live in of remakes, remasters, and requels, if this movie were remade from the ground up, who would you want playing Jack Torrance? That's not Jack Nicholson.
So it would have to be another, like, character actor.
I have an
somebody with a.
I have three.
You
answers.
have an.
Go.
There is somebody that immediately came to mind, but
who comes to mind for you first?
So the first person I thought of was Tom Hardy. Actually, I was like, I bet he could really like pull out like the facial acting.
I can see that. I
could see him doing it.
Okay.
So,
Bobby, who do you have?
The answer is obvious. The answer is Chris Evans. Chris Evans could play it.
I could see him doing it. Yeah.
And here's the thing about Chris Evans. It's the same thing with Knives Out. You do not expect him to be evil, which makes his descent into madness all the more compelling. It's the same thing.
He is a deceptively good actor. So.
Yeah. Chris Evans is fantastic. Chris Evans is really good, which is why you love him as Captain America. Is because, like, you think he's one-dimensional, but no, you need somebody that good to be that vanilla. It's the same reason why you like, what the fuck is his name who plays Superman?
Henry Cavill.
Yeah, Henry Cavill. Same reason. Both of them very good actors. You just need them to play those roles because they're the only ones who can play that vanilla. But I really feel like Chris Evans would do a really good job in that.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it. He's just be really good in that role. I can just see it very easily. Him just being like, Wendy, light of my life, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm just gonna bash him right the fuck in, and then he rushes for it, and then she hits him. Like, it'd be so good. Like, he just says it so quickly, like that like he wouldn't say it as short as Jack Nicholson does. He'd say it so much more quickly, and he'd go for it, and that would be the time where whoever we're playing as Wendy would just fucking hit him with it, and it'd be so good. It'd be great.
The three that came to mind for me.
You have three.
I had three that immediately came to mind. Two of them immediately off the cuff, entirely because of how emotive they are, and you're probably already guessing who they are. One, Nicolas Cage. I think he could pull off Jack Torrance very well. With how expressive that dude is, he's got it in the bag. Another one, Jim Carrey. I think I would be interested, more in him doing the role, because again, kind of similar with Cage, they have that emotive ability that I think would be very interesting.
They're both a little too old, but in their prime, I see it. I see it both.
And then another one that kind of came at the very end here, just because of like how much of a method actor the dude is, Daniel Day-Lewis. Again, probably a little too old to do it now.
Those are three too old actors.
And retired. Yeah,
he's retired. I didn't know that.
So Daniel DDL retired. Jim Carrey refuses to do anything that's not family friendly. And then, Nicolas Cage would do it.
Nick Cage would do it, but Nick Cage also, he's just too old. Nick Cage
taking very introspective roles now.
Yeah. Nick Cage is more likely to play Halloran than anything else, and he'd be a really good. Halloran,
I could definitely see that.
He'd be such a good Halloran because they just play him like he just play him super nice, super calm, super correct, and his death scene would be just fucking the most intense, tragic thing you've ever seen. Just him screaming at the top of his lungs, like
as he threw an axe to his heart.
It'd be great. It'd be great.
Oh boy.
But hey, that's not all. We fucking also rate this bad boy on a scale of 5 to 5.
Oh.
With half points allowed. So something like a 1 out of 5 technically allowed, but also if you say it, I'm going to drive to your home, I don't care how far it is, tonight and beat you to death. Or a 5, which would also be correct. But also like a 4.75. Nah, you can't do that. That's wrong. That's bad. That's bad. But you can't do that. Even though, I could see a 4.75 being a correct score. I don't agree with it, but I think it happened.
Could you?
Starting with the person who's talked the least this episode, Corbin.
Yeah. So I kind of started the first little bit of my talking in this episode after the intro, right? I basically started just with what I would say in a review, which is just that like everything about this movie is perfect. It's very, very difficult to find flaws in this movie because not only is everything intentionally done, right? Everything. And if you go and seek out the multiple proper documentaries on this, you would see that. But not only is everything intentionally done, which many other directors do, but everything is intentionally done well, which is very important. A lot of directors, a lot of filmmakers do everything very purposefully, and it's just like it doesn't even matter, right? But everything that happens in this movie, every little detail is so perfect and adds to the vibe and the horror and the rising tensions of the film in every little way, and that is just what like lends itself to it, right? Like the camera shots are all just the exactly what you need them to be, right? Like the use of sound design. One of my favorite moments is when Danny's riding the trike along through the hallways, and it's like ba 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 boo, ba 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 boo. And it's like, man, that is just amazing because it's so innocuous, but it gets you're like scared anyway. And that's so much of this movie is like nothing is happening, but it's scary. And it's because of the way it's shot, it's because of the music, it's because of the acting, and all of these things come together just to make like one of the perfect horror movies. And so for me, it's a 5 out of 5. It's one of the all-time best, and it always will be.
Bobby.
Alan.
Okay, I'll take it. I mean, the only thing I would want to add there It's a 5 out of 5. I'll just say it at the top. But the only thing I want to add is the intention with which this movie is shot is impeccable. We get a good scene where we are watching two characters, one advance, one backpedal, for like 4.5 minutes. So just think about that. Just what I assume is one shot, it kind of feels like it kind of has to be, like, of just this backpedaling, this constant struggle between these two characters, one that is finally, like, it's hard to put to words just how well it's shot and how scary it is. It's terrifying watching that specific scene. And that, to me, is just like the epitome of what this movie is. That specific scene of just this drawn-out horror is just really what this whole movie experience is. It starts early on to make you be a little worried, and it just keeps getting worse. It's very rare that we talk about a movie on this show that, like, gets scarier and kind of just continues to get scarier. But this is a good example of it, like, of actually understanding the structure of horror in a way that I think is unique to itself. 5 out of 5, absolute masterpiece.
I'm notorious on this podcast for being the guy who breaks the scale. And I was ready, willing to do that. But here's the thing. Stanley Kubrick has known to be quite an abusive director. And Stanley Kubrick was also known to actually, for what it's worth, remove a wonderful actress who we talked about several times, Shelley Duvall, from our lexicon of actresses and of actors as a whole for about 20 years. 20, 30, 40 plus years she has not acted because of Stanley Kubrick. And for that, I cannot break the scale. But for that, I can't give this movie less than a 5 out of 5. It's a perfect 5, but it can only be that. It cannot break the scale. And because this movie is so perfect, and because this movie deserves to be more than perfect, but because of what the actors and actresses in this movie had to go through, it can only be perfect. So, watch the movie. If you haven't already, do it. I'm going to tell it to you again in the spoiler-free part of this podcast. Do it. It's so good. It's crazy how much this movie makes you want to watch it again. That's the crazy thing about this movie. Is it immediately
it's 2.5 hours you want to turn on immediately after
it's
finishing
two
it.
and a half. It's a 2.5 hour long film.
I thought about that after I finished. It's like, I could watch this again right now, actually.
That's exactly. It's like, holy fuck, I want to watch this movie again. Like, it's so good. Like, but again, it should be the ultimate horror film, but again, abusive director who's also just a savant. So, 5 out of 5.
But that's not all we do on this show. No. We also discuss whether or not a movie is essential to horror as a whole. Now, this section is completely spoiler-free, so if you haven't seen The Shining, first of all, do so. But know that you can listen to this part without any spoilers. If you skipped ahead to this section, all three of us gave this movie a 5 out of 5.
We're a monolith, baby.
Now, following recent tradition and going in reverse order, Bobby, is this movie essential to horror?
Oh, I don't know, Corbin. Is this movie essential? Is it a 5 out of 5 all across the board? Is it The Shining? Right? Does it have one of the most iconic scenes in horror movie history? Is it
several? Even some would say.
Yeah. Yes. Is it based off of a book written by my favorite author of all time? Is it a movie that has documentaries better than some of the movies we've reviewed for this podcast? Of course it's essential. Of course it's essential. This movie is so deep, so complex, so good. I can't hate it, even if I could. Again, I must, spoiler free of course, inform you that this movie is created, and some of the acting profiles in this movie is regarded to being part of like an abusive personality of Stanley Kubrick. That being said, this movie is so good. It's fantastic. It does things that I think both the director and the writer of the original novel of this movie did not realize it could do. I truly believe this. We didn't talk about this in the spoiler content of this, but I think this whole abusive angle only happened because of the abusive angle from the actors and the actresses, like, and the director. I think this couldn't happen otherwise. I think it's actually really, really important. So, like, absolutely the most essential movie that we probably, not my favorite movie that we've ever actually reviewed, but maybe the most essential movie we reviewed of all time. Yep, that's me.
I mean, like, yeah. The Shining just is the epitome of the rising action aspect of horror done to its utmost degree. I don't know that any other film we've watched on the show so far has really captivated that specific part of like what makes horror kind of not just what makes it so endearing, I think, to people, because like you can't just go from nothing to everything's scary. I mean, you can, but it's not going to work in the same way. This movie to me just is a prime example of how you need to structure a film to always be scary, but have that scary be under your like perceptibility, until you then think back and go, wait a minute, no, that was scary from the beginning. And then it just kind of just keeps ratcheting that up throughout and throughout. It's absolutely essential.
Well, there you go. What could I possibly add, right? What could I possibly add?
What could you possibly add? What could he add?
Ooh, what could I add?
What could he add?
If there's anything I could add that would lend to its essentiality, is this. Not only is this well regarded as one of the best horror films of all time, typically in your lists in the top 3 or 5, alongside movies such as The Exorcist
and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Not only is this a horror movie that transcends genres, that people of all genre preferences watch. Not only is it one of the best movies of all time, period. It is also one of the most riffed on, guys. I mean, there are parodies of this movie all over the place. It's crazy. And that's important, you know? I mean, that is an essential part of horror history, you know, is the parody.
I mean,
and,
we have a whole genre, we have a whole franchise of movies that's the whole thing they do. Like,
I'm pretty sure I've seen a meme.
It takes a lot to get there.
Blowing Sora from Kingdom Hearts. I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
Exactly.
Of course you have.
Exactly. This movie is full of iconic shots and iconic scenes that have been memed and parodied to death and back to life and to death again, and will continue to do so
I guess that was
for decades to come.
I guess that was a minor spoiler.
Is it?
I don't know. I don't know anymore.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
If you've seen the music video for The Kill, it's not a spoiler.
Exactly. They had a whole music video that was just The Shining.
Break me. I am finished with you.
See? This movie is absolutely essential. And I just want to give a quick shout out, right? Just a quick shout out to one very iconic moment, right? That everybody knows about. It's in all the trailers, it's in all the clips that we haven't mentioned not one single time. Just a quick shout out to the elevator of blood, right? That we never mentioned. It's such a great shot.
It's so good.
It is an amazing shot. It is a practical effect. It looks stunning. When I watched it, I was like, wow, like this looks amazing, and it's like scary, and like everything about it is perfect.
He's right.
That alone would make this movie essential, let alone everything else.
It's crazy.
Yes,
It's crazy that made this movie essential alone, but Darth Maul Goblin did not make the first Insidious movie essential. That's crazy to me.
It's almost like Insidious is just not as good.
It's almost as if the entire Insidious franchise shouldn't have been essential, and we're just laughing here as a joke, and all of us said it was. So that's wild. Okay.
I stand by it. And speaking of things I stand by, what are we all up to, and where can we find you, Bobby? What's been going on with you?
Yeah, no, that's fair. You can find me at twitch.tv/theredweenie. I haven't been online until probably the new year. That just seems to be when it happens for us, unless
2023.
Yeah. But I have been playing a lot of the new Pokemon game. I have me and my wife have spent the entire past Thanksgiving time in bed with each other doing Pokemon, and not to spoil any Pokemon things, have been playing Pokemon, have been just leveling up all over, guys. We're almost through it. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of good times between me and with all of us. We moved one of our TVs into our bedroom. It's been a great time. I love my partner. I love Pokemon. My favorite Pokemon of all time, a Mankey.
Oh, I love this, actually, yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and make that spoiler happen here, live on the air. For the first time in like 20, almost 30 years, has gotten a new evolution. And Annihilate is the move. I'm just going to say it. Annihilate fucking kicks ass. But yeah.
I love that name. Is that the spoiler you've been trying to share with everybody?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Fun fact, if you get Primeape to level 35 and then use Rage Punch 20 times, I don't give a fuck. We're here now.
20 times. I love that.
Yeah, you get Annihilate. Annihilate is ghost fighting and is the third evolution. Yeah, there's only 2 Pokemon who are ghost fighting, and it's Annihilate and Marshadow, and Annihilate is better. Annihilate has moved up to the top of OU based on its typing alone. I don't give a fuck this is taking time. It's great. It's my favorite Pokemon. I don't care. Mankey has been my favorite Pokemon of all time, and yeah. Corbin knows this for sure, that I've been a Mankey fan forever. And it does not change any. Yeah, say it out loud. Say it out loud right now that I've liked Mankey as long as I've known you.
Bobby loves monkeys. What can I say?
Thank you. I just need to be
big boxing monkey guy over there.
I just need to be known out loud because somebody's gonna tell me, because Annihilate's meta now, and I can't let that happen. Alan, what do you?
Dude just got in for the ghost typing.
No.
I too have been playing Pokemon quite a bit. I went with Violet, and I went with the Fire Crocodile because that's just cool.
Same. He wanted to be loved so bad.
He did. He was ready. He was willing. It was a good time. Pokemon has been a ton of fun. It runs like dog shit on the Switch. It's very poorly optimized, but
my favorite is watching the people walk in the background and they're like,
it's one of the worst performing Pokemon games I've ever played, but man, I'm having so much fun with it. It's frustrating as hell. Also, for reference, in 3 days' time, they sold 10 million copies of that game. It's crazy. God of War in 2 weeks just came out. 5 million copies. They doubled it.
Well, there are more Switches out there.
Well, not if you think PS5s and PS4s. No, there's more of some. Well, there are, but that's just Nintendo for you. But that's been the other thing is I've been playing a lot of God of War Ragnarok. That game is simultaneously amazing and incredibly frustrating at the same time. It's more God of War. If you loved God of War 2018, you're going to enjoy Ragnarok a whole hell of a lot. There's a lot of cool story bits going on. If you understand like the mythos of, Norse mythology, it unlocks so much more of what's going on in the background of that story. But yeah, it's been a calm couple weeks. We're all gonna have a bit of building to do here pretty soon with the Battle Forces coming out. I know I just picked up my first ever Age of Sigmar box, so I'll officially be into that too at some point here when that gets to me next Saturday. So yeah.
Have you picked your Storm Host yet?
My what?
Your Storm Host.
Your sub faction.
See, here's the thing: you're playing Sigmarines, which are basically Space Marines, but also bad.
Yeah.
That's why I only play Xenos armies. I only play Chaos Destruction armies and Death armies. I just play armies that aren't anywhere related to 40k when I play Sigmar.
But Bobby, I have dragons and lightning. I don't know what more you want from me.
I have skeletal whatever, and I also have
dragons.
I also have dwarf boys.
Dragon.
Have you considered that?
I have dwarf boys in 40k. I'm with you there, bud.
So does he.
This is true.
And I've actually won games with my dwarf boys.
Wow. Why you gotta cut me so deep? Son of a bitch. Played 2 games.
Eat shit, loser. Eat shit.
Hate it.
Oh boy, what have I been up to?
Yeah.
So I first of all, you can find me at Corbangarang on Twitter. You can find me at Bolters_Bourbon on Twitter. I'm talking about Warhammer, and you can find me on Mastodon at Warhammer.social at Bolters and Bourbon, which is a mouthful, but that's how Mastodon works. If you those are really my main accounts are the Warhammer ones. That's really where I spend my most tweeting and tooting, as Mastodon says. So I spend most of my free time involved with Warhammer, right? I'm always building, painting, working on something. I'm just about to start this bad boy, the Lord of Change.
Finally.
Fuck yeah, dude.
I am getting my army.
Why him and not Magnus?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Wouldn't you like to
know? I am getting my army ready for our January 2,000 point tournament, and maybe that could key you in on a few things. And I'm very, very excited for where that is about to go. I'm very excited for where 40k is going in the future with this next update. It's a good time. It's a good time to be a Warhammer fan, I think. This last week, if you're listening, this last week was Cyber Week / Black Friday / Thanksgiving. And with that, I got into a couple of other war games, because I had decided quite a while ago that I was going to be into war games and not just Warhammer. So I'm excited to start playing other things, such as Marvel Crisis Protocol and Star Wars X-Wing, among others. So follow me and see me talk about all of that. And I have also been playing Pokemon, of course. Everybody's playing Pokemon right now. I'm playing a lot less than these guys are. My highest level Pokemon, who is my starter, who I picked Quaxley, because full of sass, and I love him. He's level 16. He's level 16. So if that keys you into where I'm at, that's where I'm at. Right? He hasn't even evolved yet. Spoilers, I guess.
No.
But on the plus side, my favorite Pokemon of all time always is and always has been Gyarados, and I got a Magikarp immediately. So this is kind of great.
Fun fact, wait, let me help you. You can put him first, and he can still win on the auto battles on typing advantage.
Can he really? Oh,
yes.
I'm definitely gonna do that. I love that.
I'm just letting
the auto battles. The auto battle system is amazing. I'm just like walking around like pushing that button. It's like gives me half experience. Like who cares? It takes a 10th of the time. Like I'm gonna kill everybody.
There's a reason why my Gengar became a Gengar, and that my Primeape became a Primeape so quickly, because Ghost and fighting are so easy to auto battle so quickly.
Yeah, the auto battle system, the best thing about this game.
Me and my wife had Haunters, and then we both went like, "Hey, I have a Haunter," and she's like, "Hey, I have a Haunter." And we're like, "You wanted a Gengar?" And she's like, "I would love a Gengar," and it's like, "I would love a Gengar too," and now we have Gengars.
It's always been my least favorite evolution because Haunter is so much cooler than Gengar.
Gengar is very cool.
Haunter is just the best.
My Gengar is
I love
she.
Haunter.
Her name is Boo, and she is fantastic. And I don't give a shit what anyone says.
I don't name my Pokemon. I turned that feature off immediately.
You can do that?
I love that there's a setting you can go, and it's like you can just turn it off so it never asks you when you catch a Pokemon to nickname.
I have a lady fire starter because I wasn't expecting it to be a her. Her name's Stan Mantha, nickname Stan. It's a whole thing. But hey, you can find the podcast anywhere at Essential Scares. And hey, give us a like, give us a follow. 5 stars is incredibly important to us. Me and Corbin both just recognized this week that we can give our own podcast 5 stars. And it would mean more to us if you give us 5 stars on your streaming platform of choice. But hey, next week, we're going to continue Bobby's love of movies that are good. And we are going to go with Dr. Sleep before we go into movies that Bobby hates. So, hey, if you want to follow the podcast and listen to the movies as we listen to them, Dr. Sleep is a good movie before we go into, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre version. So, hey, I've been Bobby, Corbin's been your host, and this has been Essential Scares. Play that Red Cup movie. Did I hit all the notes?
I mean, technically.